Hannah, Matt, what happened? Returning from work, I was confronted with a shocking scene right before my eyes. My daughter, Hannah, and my husband, Matt, were lying in the living room, motionless. I rushed over in a panic, but neither of them was breathing. Nearby, a rope and what appeared to be a suicide note were carelessly placed. My hands trembling, I picked up the note. Reading the contents, my mind went completely blank. What on earth? Matt taking Hannah's life. After that, unable to believe the reality, I finished arranging the funerals for the two of them. The police had quickly concluded their investigation, agreeing with the content of the suicide note. In other words, it was deemed a suicide pact. That just couldn't be true. Matt could never do such a thing. As I was stunned, a certain person came to see me. And then, a surprising truth came to light. I immediately reported this to the police and persistently asked them to reinvestigate. Eventually, the police reluctantly began to reinvestigate. They came to my house a few days later. I'm sorry, it wasn't a suicide pact. One of the officers said slowly, seemingly with difficulty. The two of them. I was filled with disbelief as the facts were revealed. My name is Amy. I turned 50 this year. I'm a part-time worker at a small local company, in addition to being a housewife. My husband Matt is 52, 2 years my senior. He works as a section manager in the general affairs department of his company. We have one child, an 11-year-old in 5th grade, Hannah. Hannah is not our biological child. Hannah is adopted. Matt and I got married in our 20s, but couldn't have children. We went through infertility treatments for a long time. However, it was a heavy burden on my body, and we decided to give up before I turned 40. Instead, Matt and I agreed to adopt. That's how Hannah came into our lives. Hannah grew up healthy and turned into a kind and honest child. Whether she was our biological child or not didn't matter. We cherished Hannah more than anything. Our family was no different from any other. No, our bond was even stronger. That such a horrifying event could happen to us was unimaginable. I didn't want to believe it. No, I still can't believe it. But it really did happen. Mom, I'm home. In the evening, Hannah returns home with her usual cheerful voice. Behind her are friends from the same class with whom she has recently become close. Hello, excuse us. Excuse us. Welcome. It was Kyle and Kathy. Kyle is a mischievous boy who's good at video games, and Kathy is a diligent honor student. For some reason, they clicked with Hannah, and recently, they've been playing together more often. They immediately go into Hannah's room and seem to be enjoying a game together. Hearing their lively voices brings a smile to my face. I prepared snacks for the three of them in the kitchen. It's a pound cake from the patisserie near the station, reasonably priced. I wondered for a moment if it was too cheap, but then I thought better of it. There's no need for pretense. The truth is, the elementary school Hannah is attending has many wealthy students. Because this area is home to many leading local businesses, it naturally attracts a lot of company owners and such. We got the land cheap from Matt's relatives and just happened to build our house here. We're not particularly wealthy. So, this was unexpected. At school events like parent-teacher meetings, many parents turn up in glamorous clothes, carrying expensive brands. I felt a bit out of place in that atmosphere. As someone without brand-name clothes, I stand out, and at parent meetings afterwards, conversations about overseas vacations and high-end restaurants were the norm. I still vividly remember feeling somewhat uncomfortable. As a result, their kids also wear nice clothes and have discerning tastes. Thinking about it, I was hesitant to serve snacks to Hannah's friends that could be seen as cheap. But there's no need to go out of my way to serve expensive treats to kids. I don't think it's good for Hannah to indulge in luxuries from such a young age. Shaking off my concern, I knocked on Hannah's door and entered. Okay, everyone, I brought pound cake. Enjoy. The kids cheered. Lucky. Thanks, ma'am. Thank you very much. Kyle's eyes sparkled, and Kathy thanked me sweetly. Hannah also smiled and said, Mom, thank you. Regardless of adult circumstances, kids are innocent. That's what I thought. But then Kyle said something unexpected. Ma'am, isn't this the cheapest pound cake from the shop near the station, like $2? You know it well, Kyle. But even though it's cheap, it's really tasty. Seeing through me, I felt a flutter of anxiety inside. If you're going to that store, then the $6 cheesecake is the best. The expensive ones do taste better, right? Is your family having a hard time with money, Hannah? Kyle's blunt question left Hannah and me with puzzled expressions. Do they have such conversations at home? As I was pondering how to respond, Kathy came to our rescue. That's not nice, Kyle. It's rude to talk about prices like that. Whatever. By the way, the cake made by a famous patissier we ordered the other day was really delicious. Kyle started bragging carelessly. Though taken aback by his behavior, Hannah and Kathy responded with impressed wows and nods. Well, it must be the age when they want to brag about something. As the kids started getting excited, I left Hannah's room. That night, Matt came home. We all gathered at the dinner table, and as usual, Hannah chatted away. Today we played games again. I beat Kathy but couldn't win against Kyle. Kyle is really good at games, and he knows a lot. Plus, he's a foodie. Is that so? I nodded casually. Recalling the day's events made me feel complicated, but since Hannah didn't seem to mind, it was a relief for now. Still, I hadn't expected Kyle to suddenly bring up the price. Kyle's family is indeed from a distinguished background. I remember seeing Kyle's mother at a parent-teacher meeting, dressed in expensive clothes, looking down on me. From her demeanor, they must be accustomed to high-end everything, not giving a second thought to something as modest as a cheap pound cake. Unaware of such things, Matt just smiled warmly. It's great you have such good friends. Yay, ever since I got into this class, every day has been really fun. It was a peaceful, normal time, just like always. I was being naive. At the time, I never dreamed that our everyday life would suddenly crumble. The feeling of unease came quickly. Lately, it seemed like Hannah wasn't her usual spirited self. Had something happened at school? Perhaps a fight with a friend, or trouble with her studies. Recently, she hadn't been eating much dinner and spent more time holed up in her room. This day, too, she went straight to her room as soon as she came home. Before, she used to come into the kitchen right after getting home, saying, "I'm hungry," and would talk brightly about her day at school. Worried, I bought Hannah's favorite muffins on my way home from work. I'll share the snack with her and listen to what's bothering her. Hannah, snack time. Imagining Hannah's happy face, I opened the door without knocking. Wait, don't come in. In her haste, something fell from Hannah's hand. Sorry, what's this? I picked it up. Then Hannah turned pale. It was a pregnancy test. A line clearly appeared in the positive section. What is this? What does this mean? I couldn't believe what I saw and let out a choked voice. Hannah started to say, but then clammed up. No matter how persistently I asked, got angry, or what I did after that, Hannah wouldn't open up. She only nodded to confirm that the pregnancy test was hers, which means Hannah is pregnant. I could only think it was a lie. Indeed, Hannah had started her periods this year. But she's still in elementary school, still a child. I've heard that some kids her age already have boyfriends, but Hannah isn't like that. Even when I asked who the other party was, Hannah wouldn't say. Could it have been forced upon her by someone? The thought made me shudder. What kind of person would do such a thing to a child? I persisted until the last minute, hoping Hannah would open up, but it was impossible. Finally, Hannah broke down crying. At this point, I was at a loss too. I resumed preparing dinner, which I had abandoned earlier, and attended to Matt when he came home. The dinner table with the three of us was unusually quiet, something that never happened before. Hannah, still eating very little, said, "I'm going to sleep now," and quickly retreated to room again. Wait, Hannah, we haven't finished talking. Calling after her was useless. She didn't respond at all. Eventually, sensing something was up, Matt asked, "What's going on? You both have been so quiet during dinner. Did you have a fight or something?" At Matt's words, I let out a deep sigh. Actually, after some thought, I decided to tell Matt the truth. Such a serious matter was too much for me to handle alone. Matt was astonished when he heard the story. No way, are you kidding? Could it be a mistake? But I saw it with my own eyes, and Hannah herself said, "This is mine." When I said that, Matt contorted his face and exclaimed, "But Hannah is still in elementary school. Who could she have with?" I mentioned something that came to mind. Come to think of it, there was an email circulating about a suspicious person lurking near the school, warning everyone to be careful. I don't want to think about it, but maybe. It's possible. She might have been approached by a suspicious person on her way home from school. He nodded. That's true. Maybe that's why she can't talk about it. But if she really is pregnant, it's serious. We have to take her to a woman's clinic. Yeah, and I'll also try to get Hannah to talk to me. Depending on how it goes, we might have to go to the police. Hearing the word police, I felt dizzy. This has turned into an unthinkable situation. But we need to catch the perpetrator quickly. I couldn't forgive anyone who would do such a thing to an elementary school student. We had to act quickly. Fortunately, tomorrow is Saturday, and everyone is off. We decided to persuade Hannah to go to the hospital or the police. We were determined. The next day, after finishing breakfast, just as we were about to talk to Hannah, my cell phone rang. Hello, what? It was my boss calling. It seems theirs was a problem, and I was asked if I could somehow make it to work today. My workplace consists of just my boss and his wife, one full-time supervisor, and 2 of us part-timers, totaling 5 people. Normally, part-timers don't work on weekends, but due to a staff shortage, they've asked if I could come in for a few hours. But I was hesitant, but they said it would be over by noon, so I reluctantly agreed. I explained the situation to Matt and told him I was heading to work. Matt was understanding and said, "I'll talk to Amy about it while you're away." I couldn't help but feel anxious. The job was to correct an ordering mistake, and though it was supposed to be done by noon, it lasted until 3 p.m. I wonder if Matt and Amy are tired of waiting. Rushing home, I call out, "I'm home," but no one responds. Feeling suspicious, I enter the living room. Then I'm met with a shocking sight. Amy and Matt were lying face down. Amy, Matt, what happened? I rush over in a panic, but neither of them is breathing. Nearby, a rope and a piece of paper that looks like a suicide note are carelessly placed. The content of the paper was as follows. "I'm sorry. It was me who wronged Amy. I don't expect to be forgiven. I'm taking responsibility and leaving this world with Amy." Reading this, my mind went blank. What does this mean? Matt got Amy pregnant. And then, to take such an action. With trembling fingers, I operate my smartphone to call an ambulance and the police. Indeed, both were already gone. I could barely stand, overwhelmed by the events. This is a nightmare. It doesn't feel like reality. Amidst my confusion, the police proceed with their work, coldly and methodically. Immediately, a crime scene investigation was conducted, and afterwards, for questioning, I was taken to the police station. There, I had to discuss matters that were difficult even to speak about, such as the fact that Amy was not my biological daughter. She was pregnant, and we were just about to go to the hospital and report to the police. After being detained for a long time and talking continuously, I was indeed feeling exhausted. I was still dragging the mental shock with me, feeling foggy in my head. That's when it happened. The detective in front of me, a man of late middle age, looked at me with sympathetic eyes. "Your husband must have been quite panicked. If you had gone to the hospital, tests would have been done, and it would have been discovered that he had relations with your daughter." At those words, I snapped back in anger. My husband is not that kind of person. There must be some mistake. Ma'am, I don't want to say this, but these kinds of cases are more common than you might think. She's not your biological daughter, right? It's possible that someone would adopt a child with that intention from the beginning. I was shocked at the detective's audacity. How dare you? What a horrible thing to say. Both my husband and I have raised Amy with all the love and care in the world. The thought of having such vile intentions is unimaginable." As I said this, the detective's face grew even more pitiful. "Well, I understand you want to believe that. But men, you know, they have a side they don't show to their wives. Matt is not that kind of man." I wanted to say that, but my mouth just opened and closed. Exhausted and angry, I had reached my limit and couldn't speak anymore. It seems from that suicide note, they've been deemed a suicide pact. Such a thing is unimaginable. No matter how much I insisted, the police wouldn't take me seriously. As a result, no further investigation was conducted. Eventually, Amy and Matt's funeral was held. Even as I went through the procedures, I still couldn't believe it. I kept thinking this must be a dream, as the thought raced through my body. My mind was always foggy, as if covered in haze, but with the help of my parents, we managed to get through the funeral. Amy's school friends, and especially her close friends Kathy and Kyle, were also there. Matt's friends and work colleagues were also there. Everyone was devastated by the loss. But given the nature of their deaths, it's undeniable they were treated like a sensitive topic. Despite not wanting to hear it, whispers from the mourners reached my ears. That husband, it seems he could only love little children. And then to do that with a child not related by blood. Such a terrible incident. I wanted to scream. No, it's not true. Why did it have to come to this? Matt would never do such a thing. Something is definitely wrong. I thought so, but there was nothing I could do. Lately, I've been unable to sleep or eat, day after day. I had become completely emaciated. Despite having lived an ordinary life until now, how could this happen? I had no energy to do anything, and time just passed by. Then, one day, it happened. The doorbell rang, and I opened the door. It was Kathy and her mother. I hadn't seen Kathy since the funeral. Her face even more tear-streaked than before. Thank you for coming, Kathy." I forced a smile on my tired face and led her to the altar. Kathy, crying, offered incense to Amy. "Amy, I wanted to play more with you, to play games and study together. I miss you, Amy." The pure voice of the child almost made me cry again. But after a while, something changed. Her sobs growing, Kathy cries out, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Kathy, what do you mean by it's your fault?" Silent, Kathy's mother spoke on her behalf. "Actually, Kathy has told me something." And then she shared something shocking. "So that's what happened. Thank you for telling me, Kathy." After hearing the story, I was stunned. This fact should be reported to the police. Kathy's mother stated firmly. But I just looked down. But it seems to have already been handled as a suicide pact. Then Kathy's mother said something surprising. "I have a relative in the police force. I'll talk to them and see if they can somehow reopen the investigation on our behalf. Please ask them for me too. It's just too sad for Amy and her father to be left like this." Kathy pleaded, tears in her eyes. Their words moved my weary heart, if only just a little. Understood. I want to uncover what happened to Amy and Matt. Since Kathy and her family are willing to help, I'll muster all the strength I have to do whatever I can. A few days later, I was at the police station to discuss the facts communicated by Kathy and her family. I briefly explained the situation to the detective who had talked to me before. "That's why I think it wasn't a suicide pact. Please, investigate again." However, the detective frowned. "Even if you say that, the case is closed as per your husband's suicide note. The investigation has already been concluded." Facing the detective's annoyed expression, I bowed my head. "Please, make an exception." Despite my persistent requests, the detective's response did not change. Moreover, he started saying things like, "We have various other cases and are very busy." Seeing no other way, I mentioned the name of the police relative that Kathy's mother had told me about. "I have spoken to that person," I said, and the detective suddenly went pale. "Excuse me for a moment." He left the seat and after a while, returned with someone who seemed to be his superior. Then suddenly, their tone became polite, and they said, "We will reopen the investigation." This surprised me. The police relative related to Kathy's mother must be quite influential. In any case, it was a relief. I felt a weight lifted off my chest. This would lead to significant progress in the case. Later, 2 police officers came to my house. Their demeanor was different from before, almost apologetic. When I led them to the living room, they immediately bowed their heads. "I'm sorry. We were investigating under the assumption of a suicide pact, but that wasn't the case." "Just as I thought," I muttered. One of the police officers, with a serious expression, informed me. The 2 were killed by a third party. The police, upon re-investigating, examined everything thoroughly. They took fingerprints from the house again, reviewed belongings and surveillance footage, and conducted interviews with the neighbors, among other actions. As a result, they found a vehicle belonging to the real perpetrator on the surveillance cameras near the home. It belonged to Lisa and Sam, Kyle's parents. They were the ones who took the lives of Amy and Matt. In fact, it was Kyle who had impregnated Amy. This is the confession I heard from Kathy. That day traced back to several months ago. Kyle, curious and knowledgeable, seemed to have awakened to sexuality one day, influenced by adult movies and comics. Out of curiosity, he suggested to Kathy, "Let's play an adult game." Kathy, lacking knowledge, didn't fully understand what the act entailed, but she felt something ominous about it intuitively. Therefore, Kathy refused. She felt uncomfortable spreading such a story, so she kept it to herself and told no one. Since then, Kyle gave up on persuading Kathy. Next, he turned his attention to Amy. According to Kathy, Amy also lacked knowledge about sex. From what I could see, Amy was innocent and didn't seem to have any interest in such matters. Amy was kind, so I think she couldn't refuse Kyle's request. She probably didn't understand what it would entail. I should have told her to refuse if Kyle asked her anything. Then none of this would have happened. It's my fault, Kathy said through her tears. She regretted not warning her in advance. Meanwhile, the situation took the worst possible turn. They were gone. Kathy, attending the funeral, was shocked to learn that Matt, Amy's father, was suspected. Feeling it couldn't go on like this, she bravely confided in her mother. And after learning everything, Kathy's mother brought her to her house. It was Kyle who got Amy pregnant. It wasn't your husband. So there was no reason for them to take their lives. Maybe it's hard to say this, but they might have been silenced by adults related to Kyle. Kathy's mother spoke with difficulty. Yet, her terrible suspicion turned out to be true. Kyle's parents, Lisa and Sam, had devised a plan. From the moment they learned of Amy's pregnancy, Amy was confused by changes in her body and likely informed Kyle. This information inevitably reached Kyle's parents. They panicked. Kyle's family was prestigious, with members holding high social status and elite positions. A sexual scandal involving a child, still in elementary school, was absolutely forbidden. Thus, they decided to eliminate Amy before any scandal broke out. They probably had crafted a story of Amy being harmed by a predator and subsequently dying. Initially, they intended to lure only Amy somewhere. Likely, Amy was called out under some pretext, planning to go alone. It happened on a Saturday morning, after I had gone to work. But Matt must have confronted Hannah about it when he found out. At that time, Hannah told Matt the truth. Then, Hannah and Matt went to visit Kyle's house together. However, this was an unexpected event for Lisa and Sam. They had said to come without telling the parents, and if Matt came along, it would mess up their plan. In a panic, Lisa and Sam decided to change their plan. They decided to make it look like a double suicide involving Hannah and Matt. After it was all done, they moved the bodies to the living room of our house. Next to Hannah and Matt, a rope and a suicide note were left. The note said, Matt had been looking at Hannah in a sexual way and accidentally got her pregnant. So they had no choice but to take drastic measures. To avoid handwriting detection, the suicide note was forged on a computer. And with meticulous planning, they both wore gloves to ensure no fingerprints were left in the house. Their plan was executed perfectly. However, I couldn't help but wonder why the police investigation was so sloppy. But there was a reason for this too. It was due to the unique customs of this land. In areas populated by the wealthy and business owners, the police often sided with them. It was mutually beneficial as it allowed for various conveniences and favors to be exchanged. Therefore, as someone who was neither wealthy or a business owner, essentially an outsider, I was at a disadvantage from the start. There's no incentive for the police to put effort into investigations involving outsiders. So naturally, the work done is half-hearted. Even in situations that clearly seemed like foul play, the police barely investigated and took the suicide note at face value, assuming it was a mutual suicide. This case was about to be buried in darkness. However, an unexpected savior appeared. Kathy and her family. Kathy's mother's relative, who was in the police force, is likely not just an ordinary officer. He must be someone of significant status within the police department. Otherwise, there's no way a Ray investigation would have been initiated. It became clear later on that the veteran detective who was in charge of my case had been demoted. This too can be attributed to the influential figure in the police force. Upon re-examination, Lisa and Sam's car was spotted on a neighborhood surveillance camera. Of course, that alone wouldn't count as evidence. But testimonies were also obtained from neighbors who saw a suspicious man and woman duo entering and exiting the house. Based on these findings, a search warrant was issued for Lisa and Sam's residence. It's unclear if they anticipated this outcome, but Kyle's family's house was meticulously cleaned. Not a single fingerprint was found, but fortune was on our side. The fibers from the clothes Hannah was wearing that day were found at Kyle's house. Additionally, shoe prints believed to be Matt's were discovered at the front entrance. Based on this evidence, Kyle's parents, Lisa and Sam, were arrested. Initially deceptive, the two quickly confessed when confronted with the evidence. They admitted to taking Hannah and Matt's lives to cover up the shocking scandal that elementary schooler Kyle had gotten Hannah pregnant. This cleared Matt of any suspicion. I felt a slight relief. It was too cruel for Matt to be made out as a criminal on top of being killed. Afterward, this case became a major news story and caused a public uproar on TV and in magazines. The case was featured as the dark side of a wealthy family, and it seems Kyle's family's photos were spread on social media. I say seems because I haven't actually seen it myself. Friends and acquaintances told me about it, but I've been trying not to fill my head with unreliable information from the internet. From now on, I have to fight in a real place. That is, in court. As a bereaved family member, I decided to use the victim participation system and attend the courtroom. I absolutely had to say something to those people. I couldn't be satisfied otherwise. Instead of spending my time feeling down, I wanted to strike back. When I took my seat on the day, Lisa and Sam immediately caught my eye. Both were looking down, aged and worn. In this state, they looked nothing like the glittering wealthy people they purported to be. But more than that, I struggled to contain the anger and sadness that kept welling up inside me. That Hannah and Matt were killed just to uphold these people's vanity. Absolutely unforgivable. Prompted by the judge, I gave my statement. Hannah wasn't our biological child, but we raised her with all the love and care we could give. Can you understand the sorrow of having her taken from us suddenly for such an unreasonable reason? What's more, you plotted to kill my husband as well, trying to stain him with the infamy of a criminal. All for the sake of appearances, to hide your child's misdeeds with such a trivial reason. I cannot forgive you for taking the lives of two people over this. I wish for the maximum penalty. As I shouted, the courtroom fell silent. Lisa and Sam were trembling, their faces ashen. Have they only now realized the magnitude of the crime they committed? But it's too late. Repenting after taking someone's life is too little, too late. If it were possible, I would want them to return the two lives they took. If that's impossible, I think they should atone with their own lives, Lisa and Sam's. And then the verdict was delivered. As requested, the maximum penalty was imposed on both of them. To be honest, I felt relieved, at least for the moment. When the sentence will be carried out is unknown. Lisa and Sam will likely spend their days in fear until that day. Hannah and Matt may never return, but I hope they can understand even a fraction of the fear the two experienced. It's truly pitiful that their lives were taken for such trivial reasons as social appearance. And there's another person involved in this incident. Kyle. Though he wasn't directly involved in taking Hannah and Matt's lives, it's true that he was responsible for Hannah's pregnancy. Since the body has already been cremated, it cannot be confirmed, but Kyle confessed, and there were also testimonies from his parents. However, Kyle is still a minor in elementary school and under 14 years old. It's not possible to impose criminal penalties on children under 14. Therefore, a notification was made to the Child Protective Services, and he was placed in a foster care facility. He is now facing the crime he committed, crying and filled with regret. He's still a child, but he hurt Hannah due to his desires and curiosity. He should never forget that, and I hope he truly reflects on it. Afterwards, I reported the outcome of the trial in front of Hannah and Matt's graves. Matt, I've cleared your name. Hannah, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. But they received the death penalty. Not that it brings you back, but I've avenged you, so please, rest in peace. As I said that, the flowers I had placed there earlier swayed slightly. It might have been the wind, but it felt as though they were responding to me, and tears welled up in my eyes. Then, 10 years passed. Now I've moved far away from that land, to a city. Being in a place filled with memories of Hannah and Matt was too painful. That was one reason. But above all, I grew tired of living in a land where only the wealthy gather. People chasing after appearances and social status, swarming around privileges. That, more than anything, was what led to Hannah and Matt's deaths. To me, it seemed pointless, and I no longer needed to be in such a wicked place. Since then, while working, I've been active through a victim support group. I organize lectures, suggest places where victims can talk to each other, and our activities are diverse. Kathy is now helping me. Kathy has become a college student and was studying psychology. With her college enrollment, she moved to the city where I live to start living on her own, which is how she started helping me with the activities. Kathy felt tormented by guilt for not being able to warn Hannah. But the entire incident was Kyle's family's fault, not Kathy's. I've told her many times, you don't need to worry about it. It took time, but gradually we began to move forward, and Kathy started to show her bright smile again. Lately, the existence of our victims support group has become more widely known, and we've seen an increase in lectures, magazine articles, and TV appearances. We've become quite busy, but I've never forgotten Hannah and Matt for a moment. I've thought countless times about what it would be like if they were still alive. But each time, I threw myself into our activities even more. I want to be of some help to support the many families of crime victims out there. Doing so, I believe, is the best way to honor Hannah and Matt. As one of those left behind, I've resolved to fulfill this mission. No matter what hardships come, I intend to keep moving forward, looking ahead, believing that Hannah and Matt are watching over us from heaven.